Hey everyone, I'm Noah with Speedway Motors. Today we're in the TREMEC booth here with Joe Dederichs from Dederichs Motorsports. So starting off here with the 5-speeds, we got the TR4050. Joe, why don't you tell us a little bit about this one?
This is our truck or Jeep four-wheel drive transmission that we're offering. It comes from a long line of development from OEM. We still offer these transmissions in a lot of OEM models in South America and Mexico. So a lot of that technology comes from that to support this unit. These are great units, again, for all truck applications and Jeep applications. We actually make 3 versions of this. The four-wheel drive model is a universal version, so we would use it in GM, Ford, or Mopar for four-wheel drive or Jeep. We have a Ford model that has a two-wheel drive, and then we also have a GM model that is a two-wheel drive as well. The GM model does not come with the bell housing. The Ford model does come with the bell housing and will fit the Ford modular motor, Coyote, Predator, and Godzilla motor.
What are some examples of cars that came with this transmission stock?
Jeeps, pickups that are actually used, not sport pickups that actually you need to tow with and things like that. The gears are made for that. If you notice on this side, they're quite large. It's specifically a quote truck transmission, so it's made for all of those type of duties.
So would you say the purpose of this one is more set towards towing and high torque?
I would, that or, rock climbing, sport, adventure. It's got a really low first gear, and it's got a great overdrive. You kind of have the best of all worlds with this. There's some old transmissions that you can go get, and they'll fit in here about the same. The problem with them, they're no longer supported by the OEM manufacturer, and the only available parts for them are not very good. So you can spend a lot of money and not have as good a transmission. And this one by far is a better shifting, well-supported transmission, and it will be well-supported in the future.
Are you able to convert the shifter location on this one at all?
This one here, you're kind of stuck in this general location, but Dederichs Motorsports does sell a shifter that can move, so we do have offset shifters that are for this application.
So moving on over to the T5, tell us a little about this transmission.
The T5 that we have, the only version we have is for a Ford, and we only offer 1 ratio for it. It's kind of limiting. It's a wonderful transmission. It shifts great. The torque capacity on it is 300 foot-pounds of torque.
What are some examples of cars that had this one stock?
There's a lot of cars, but if you'll remember, the Fox body Mustang is probably the most widely used or thought of car that had a T5 that's domestic. This one is actually much stronger than the units that were made for that. We have case-hardened gears in this one. It's just a much stronger unit. We never put this transmission in the OEM cars. It's made a lot better and a lot stronger.
What purpose is this transmission best suited for?
This is good for vehicles that are fairly light and don't have a ton of horsepower and torque. So much like the Fox body that came out, if it's not extremely modified, this is still a very good transmission to replace it. One aspect of this transmission is that the dimensions will be a direct plug and play for all of the Fox body Mustangs. The shifter here is located here. Dederichs Motorsports does manufacture and sell offset shifters to move it, in different places, but you're kind of stuck on this transmission here. It's not nearly as versatile as, say, our TKX with multi-positions on the case.
Would you recommend the T5 for like a budget build or a street build, weekend track car?
I would recommend it as long as you're within the power range of it. It's really a great transmission. It has limited capabilities with the torque rating of 300 foot-pounds of torque.
So next up we got the TKX 5-speed. Tell us a little about this one.
The TKX 5-speed, this is what replaced the TKO transmission that we had for so many years. They made a lot of improvements. They improved the case in terms of size, so it's now, you're able to put it in A-bodies like Chevelles and things without having to cut the tunnel. It also fits in the Corvettes nicely. They've done several other upgrades internally, and another example of that would be the synchronizers. They use a 3-piece ring set instead of the older antiquated single brass ring that we did have. The rails are encapsulated with bearings rather than O-rings like the original ones were. The alignment's better.
And where is the shifter located on the TKX?
There's actually 3 positions. The way it comes stock is in the rear position. What you can do is take the 6 bolts out and turn it 180 degrees, and it would move it forward about 3 inches here onto the front socket position. We also offer a mid-shift position here on this window, and that requires a kit. We do offer the mid-shift kit for that as well. An Elite distributor installs the mid-shift kit. It does still come with a factory warranty.
What are the benefits and drawbacks of the TKX compared to other 5-speeds?
The general market has really put it through the paces, and we haven't had any catastrophes or anything. It's been pretty bulletproof. It's rated at 600 foot-pounds of torque, which is twice that of our T5 that we had aforementioned, but it's been a pretty good transmission. Its capabilities of shifting are 7,500, and which is pretty good for just a stock transmission.
What was the TKO rated at?
The TKO was rated the same, but the problem, as far as torque goes, but the problem with the TKO, it could not shift at the 7,500. It started at a lockout, depending on how heavy and the reciprocating mass was with your flywheel and clutch, but it had difficulty shifting up there anywhere near that. TKX is top of the line as far as what TREMEC sells.
So before we move on to the 6-speeds, how should someone decide if they want a 5-speed or a 6-speed?
Well, it kind of depends on what they're doing and the application. The 6-speed offers a higher power level. The rating on this one is 700 foot-pounds of torque on our Magnum 6-speed models, all of them. And so if you need more strength, that's one reason you would go to a 6-speed. If you needed a wider gear range, for an example, if you had a car that 200 mile an hour capability, you would enjoy the advantage of the gear splitting a little bit better on the fact that you had a 6-speed to break that up for you. The disadvantage obviously would be size and fitment. It requires a little bit more work to get it in some models that maybe did not come with a 6-speed to begin with.
So definitely for more powerful applications.
Absolutely, yeah. That's our strongest transmission that we manufacture. And in that, we have larger gears, and they just, they're a lot stronger.
So let's talk about the original T56 and how that came to be.
The original T56, the first one was originally made for the Viper by Borg & Warner. And then, of course, they later made the model for the F-body for General Motors, for the Camaros. And somewhere there in the 90s, TREMEC had purchased Borg Warner, the transmission part of that, and then ended up owning the T56. All of our new models are, if you notice, we got a Magnum name on them instead of the T56, and they're greatly improved by several things. They've got stronger, everything on it is stronger. All the gears are stronger. They have a higher torque rating. All of the new advantages that are done with the new 6060 models that come out in the OEM, they take advantage of that and bring that to us in the aftermarket.
Do the gear ratios differ between the original and the Magnums?
There are. We share some of the same, and then we offer 3 different gear ratios in most of the Magnums. The Magnums here, this is their general Magnum, and if you'll notice the extension housing here on this side, this is the extension housing that goes on the Magnum F. And it kind of replicates what we had out in the 98 to 02 Camaro. That was the factory 6-speed transmission that all of us, used and pulled out and put in other cars. And to this day, it's really a great seller for us because of the shifter position is different than our regular Magnum. A lot of the import cars, the JDM cars, and even some BMWs are better served with the shift location for the Magnum F. The regular Magnum has some distinct advantages. It has a speedometer that is for the mechanical, or it can go to the electronic. It also has different shift positions where you're limited on the Magnum F. So each one has its strength, if you will. We have a kind of a front shift position for the Magnum, and then you can change the shifter here and move it, lift it up, turn it 180 degrees and move it forward as well, just like you can on the TKX.
Talking about the Magnum F, is really the only difference between that and the Magnum is just for fitment reasons?
Fitment reasons, you're limited on the Magnum F in the sense it doesn't have the mechanical speedometer option, and you don't have the versatility that you have with this. For instance, if this was put in a pickup truck, you don't have the part or the portion available to you like you do on this transmission to move it forward. And that's where the advantage would go to the regular Magnum in many of those applications.
What type of build is best suited for the Magnum? Like a budget build or all the way to full-out drag car?
You know, I mean, these are performance transmissions. I don't think I would call them drag racing transmissions per se. There's people that would argue that because they're doing it every day and they're surviving, but that's really not our advocation. They do a really great job. The way we rate them, they're nominally rated, they're very robust. But the advantage to them is that the gears are very, very strong. I guess across the board, they would fill that slot with almost anything else. When you consider what else is out there in the market, it's really your only choice if you want a 6-speed that's very durable. And I think it almost fits in every one of those slots for you. Be it a budget build or you're going to get a performance car and you want to track it for a bit, it checks all of those boxes.
So you'll see a lot of people buying these used 6-speeds. Why would you want to buy a new one over a used one?
The aftermarket transmissions we sell like these have a lot of huge advantages, and you can get a good deal on some used transmissions. A lot of times a guy will pull an engine out and it'll have a transmission with it. The problem you have with most of the OEM transmissions is that they'll have a semi-remote shifter on it, and that really is difficult to go to most other applications that you'd want to put it in. And the cost to change it over to one of these, you're getting into the realm of you should have just bought one of these to begin with, you know, and then you have a used transmission that you don't know all the history on or may have to work on. So from a standpoint of, you know, finances, it really doesn't make sense. Another problem is that sometimes they have integral bell housings, so you're very limited on what the application can fit engine-wise on some of those. And then the third problem that you have with buying one and just pulling it out and putting it into whatever you want, sometimes they have like a DT flange or something, and because of the design, it almost requires you to have a 2-piece drive shaft. All of ours are designed, you know, for motorsports and carry a slip yoke and make it very easy for that application.
So coming up to the last one here, this is clearly the biggest of them all.
It is.
The Magnum XL. Talk about this.
This particular one right here is designed for the S197, S550, S650 chassis for the Ford. We also offer it in the GM application, which would be for the Gen 5 and Gen 6 Camaro as well. And in retrofitment, it also goes back to GM 3 Alpha platform, where they had the CTSV would be a good application for that, as well as the GTO.
What are the key distinctions between the Magnum XL to the T56 Magnum?
Well, the main thing would be your shifter location. If you'll notice the shifter location in the XL, that's for the extended link. The factory transmissions in both of those models aforementioned, the GM, F-body, and the Ford, most of those have remote shifters on them. They do a good job as far as what they're supposed to do, but as far as, you know, the motorsports industry and stuff, the shifter here is located directly on the rail. The other shifter is tied to the unibody and also tied to the transmission, and under a torque load, it creates a geometry problem when you're trying to shift it. And that happens when you're in a high lateral load, like on a racetrack, or if you're under real hard acceleration. And those are the very times you actually want to be able to shift quickly. This eliminates that issue and problem.
Is the shifter location on this one, can I convert it if I want to?
You could, but the other application of the Magnum would be a better application for if you had to go further forward. This really doesn't have any of the appendages that the other transmission has in terms of relocating the shifter to multi-different positions. This kind of is made specifically for those chassis. We also use these applications in different Mopar applications as well.
What bell housings are available to convert to the popular classic car applications?
That hinges upon what engine we're using. These come as a kit on the Ford models, and they come with the QuickTime bell housing. And so they'll go to all the cars in which they were fitted for chassis-wise. They started with the Mod motor, went to the Coyote, the Predator, and now we have the Godzilla. And they'll bolt up to any of those motor applications. And as far as the GM transmission, it does not come with the bell housing. It just comes as a unit. So you don't get any of the, you don't get the cross member, you don't get the shifter, and you don't get the bell housing. The nice thing about the GM transmission is that it'll bolt to pretty much any of the LS bell housings and later model engines that are used in any of those series chassis.
What are the available gear ratios in the XL?
You have 3 specific gear ratios, kind of a wide ratio and then a close ratio. Both of them are ending with the .63 overdrive. And then we have one that's kind of a really wide ratio of where it goes back down to a .50 overdrive.
What are the torque capabilities of this one specifically?
The torque capabilities of all of our Magnums are at 700 foot-pounds of torque. And the shiftability of all of our Magnums are rated at about 7,800 RPM.
So what build is the XL best suited for?
Most of the builds in terms that would be able to use the shifter in this location, they're going to be more current cars that require, something that far back. And like I mentioned prior, it'd be like a Gen 5 and up Camaro, an S197 and up Mustang. But we also have the Mopars, the Challengers, some other models along the way, such as the Cadillac CTSV, some of the earlier models. Makes an excellent fitment for those, you know what I mean? And usually that shifter position is way too far forward for any of the earlier model cars. So we're kind of more of the later type vehicles is what that would be.
Yeah. So now that we've gone through all of them, in your opinion, which transmission do you think is the best?
Wow, that's a really tough question. They're all best at different things. So for late model, just replacement transmission, I would say the Magnum XL. But then the Magnum is perfect for everything in between that's earlier if you need a 6-speed. And of course, we can't discount either one of the 5-speeds either. They do a great job. And as far as fitment and other items, each one has their place and has their own lane, and they're just wonderful in terms of that. Depends on the application, what you want to use it for.